I wanted to start from Raheem Sterling because it's a story of the last 24 hours. I've been telling you how this story was developing between Chelsea and Raheem Sterling to agree on the contract termination. And well, the contract termination between Sterling and Chelsea has been completed today. So everything is agreed, everything has been completed. Raheem Sterling will be available on a free. The contract has been terminated, and it means that Chelsea are saving money in terms of salary. So obviously for Chelsea is financially good news for a player who was not available in terms of being part of the squad, of being part of the project. And also important to mention that obviously the Chelsea future is now going to be different, saving some money and also having the opportunity to reinvest on different players.
Mentioning on other players, other topics, I know also Oscar Bobb is a big deal, an important deal of the day. It's an here we go as well. So do you want to talk about that? And so what's happening and what's the latest about him?
Yes, Oscar Bobb is another story of the day. Agreement done between Manchester City and Fulham. So the player was always going to leave Manchester City in this January window. And now, obviously, is happening after they decided to sign Antoine Semenyo from Bournemouth. The decision of the club was to let Oscar Bobb go. Many rumors also on Savinho, but Savinho was never planning to leave Manchester City. For Oscar Bobb was a priority to play on a consistent basis. There is also the World Cup, and they're going to fight for it for Norway. So let's see how this conversation in terms of World Cup will continue. But Oscar Bobb will be a new Fulham player for £27 million, 20% matching rights. So everything done, everything agreed. And of course, an important move for Marco Silva and for Fulham. Yes, I wanted to start, first of all, thank you guys.
I was mentioning, yes.
Yeah, here live with us. I wanted to start from the last news we had, and it's about Raheem Sterling. Sterling leaving Chelsea on a free transfer, so it's over between Sterling and Chelsea. And also important to mention that Chelsea will now assess all their options in these final days of the window after recalling Aaron Anselmino. There will be a meeting, I'm told, on Friday to decide on what's next for Anselmino, stay at Chelsea or find a different solution. So it's going to be a couple of days, going to be very busy for Chelsea, for sure. Sterling is leaving on a free. He has possibilities in Premier League, but also abroad. For example, in Italy, where for Napoli, and not only, he could be a last-minute option on the market. So the Raheem Sterling situation will be interesting. And then Oscar Bobb to Fulham from Manchester City, agreed this afternoon. Exclusive story from last week. Bobb is leaving for £27 million. And so an important signing for Fulham. Important money for Manchester City. Again, £27 million. They requested 35. They accept 27 because they maintain matching rights and 20% sell-on clause.
Talking about other teams involved in the Champions League last match day, which is going to be crazy tonight. I know that also you shared a news about Inter today. So if you want to mention that as well.
Yes, I wanted to mention about Diaby because former Aston Villa winger Diaby could be on his way out of Al Ittihad. This depends on Al Ittihad because the player is keen on a move to Inter. Inter made already a proposal, loan deal with buy option clause from Al Ittihad to join the Italian club. The player is open. The player already said yes to the move, but now depends on Al Ittihad, on what Al Ittihad wants to do with Diaby. For sure, there are negotiations ongoing. Inter want to add one more offensive player, and so there are conversations ongoing. And don't forget about Luis Enrique, Inter winger, because for Luis Enrique there is interest from Bournemouth. Bournemouth already made an approach over a loan deal with an obligation to buy for the former Olympique Marseille winger, and so this could be one of the domino pieces of these final days of the January transfer window.
Mentioning on the last days of the transfer window, if there is a deal that you're expecting to happen. I know I see many questions here about Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea as well. What do you have? Do you have something on these teams as well?
Yes, and then I will also reply to all the questions we have from Fenerbahçe fans, because a deal I expect to happen. I expect that there will be crazy movements around Jérémy Jacquet. This centre-back, 19 years old, from Rennes, probably one of the most talented centre-backs in the world at this stage, and many clubs are interested. Chelsea are going all in. I told you this already in the last 2-3 weeks. Chelsea made progress on player side, but still negotiating with Rennes. Rennes don't want to sell the player in this window. Could eventually consider to sell the player now for the summer. So this could be the scenario. Chelsea are interested in Jérémy Jacquet. Chelsea are pushing, trying to make it happen. There is also Liverpool in the battle, Liverpool in the race, having conversations with the agents of the player. So Liverpool are in the mix for Jérémy Jacquet, and then there is interest from Bayern only for the summer transfer window, because in that case it's possible Kim Min-jae leaves the club in the summer at Bayern, and so they are considering this possibility. But at the moment, my understanding is that Premier League is the most likely solution. So between Chelsea and Liverpool, Bayern are calling, but Premier League clubs are more aggressive in this moment. And I think for Jérémy Jacquet is going to be a very, very interesting transfer window, because there are many movements happening. And to Fenerbahçe fans, I wanted to mention about the situation of N'Golo Kanté, because Fenerbahçe are making progress. The contacts are every hour, basically, between Fenerbahçe, Al Ittihad, the agents of the player, the intermediaries of the deal. So Fenerbahçe are really pushing to try to get the deal done for N'Golo Kanté, and this is the top target. For the striker, we will see what happens, because Fenerbahçe tried for Randal Kolo Muani, but this deal is not advancing. Juventus are now working on a deal for Randal Kolo Muani, but at the moment there is still no green light from Tottenham for Kolo Muani exit. Let's see if he's going to play tonight. This is going to be also an important point. As of now, Tottenham are not giving a green light. But let's see what's going to happen, obviously, in the next days with Kolo Muani. I think it's going to be one of the most interesting situations.
Okay, so I don't know if you have more updates for today. Otherwise, we'll be back in the next hours, next days as well. For of course, will be the last days of the winter transfer window. I don't know if you have something more that you want to share.
I will pick a few more
pick
topics.
one or two questions.
Okay, we see Atlético Madrid. For Atlético Madrid and Leon Goretzka, what I wanted to say is that Atlético Madrid have genuine interest in Leon Goretzka. He's a target for Atlético Madrid. But my understanding is that Bayern manager Vincent Kompany doesn't want to lose any player in this January transfer window. So we have to see if Atletico will be able to convince Bayern to let the player go now, or eventually if Goretzka will leave Bayern as a free agent in the summer. Atletico are trying, for sure. Atletico have very good relationship with the agents of Goretzka, who are also the same agents as Ademola Lookman. So Lookman is another player to watch in these final days of the window, for sure. Not today, because there is Champions League football and is involved with Atalanta. But after that, I think Ademola Lookman, for sure, is a situation to follow. With Leon Goretzka, let's see what's going to happen. For sure, it's going to be an interesting topic. Questions on Chelsea midfielder. Chelsea tried for Douglas Luiz, but the idea was to do a loan deal. Chelsea didn't even want to include any buy option, buy obligation, just a straight loan to sign Douglas Luiz for a few months and then send him back to Juventus. But the player received this proposal from Aston Villa, and so Aston Villa were very convinced, including a buy option. So the agreement between Aston Villa, Juve, Douglas Luiz was quite easy to do. Chelsea are exploring different options, so we will see what Chelsea decide to do. I can tell you that the player is not going to be, despite all the rumors, Kes Smith from AZ, because on Kes Smith, who is one of the most talented midfielders in Europe, there are many clubs interested, but he's not going to leave in the January transfer window. Then many questions on PSG. I can tell you that draw was the priority. They got it done. So let's see if PSG will have some other opportunity. At the moment, it's quiet at Paris Saint-Germain. They're not desperate for new signings. And then I think, Fra, we can close with Liverpool and Xabi Alonso, because we have many questions always on this topic. If Xabi Alonso is going back to Liverpool.
Questions, yes,
if the deal is done, if the deal is agreed. Guys, at this stage, what I can tell you are few key points. First point, Xabi Alonso will be back soon. I have no doubts about that. I told you the day Real Madrid and Xabi decided to part company, I told you the idea is to proceed with the Xabi Alonso future with new clubs as soon as possible. Xabi will not need to rest, will not need to disconnect. So Xabi is ready. Then on Liverpool, the appreciation on both sides. Xabi appreciates Liverpool and Liverpool appreciates Xabi Alonso. For sure, they know each other very well. He was in the list even before Arne Slot. But if you ask me today, is already advanced or done Xabi Alonso to Liverpool, Liverpool remain committed to the Arne Slot project. Then let's see how this second half of the season will be. Let's see how Arne Slot is going to handle the second half of the season. At the end of the season, they will review the situation. For sure, if they decide any moment to change the manager anytime soon or in the future, I'm 100% sure Xabi Alonso will be part of this conversation.